What if one night of passion with a woman from your office changed everything, your trust, your friendship, and your entire future? Ethan Miller thought he was just getting a quick escape, but little did he know, his business partner was hiding the same secret, and the truth was about to shatter everything he thought he knew. Ethan Miller, a billionaire and the CEO of a successful tech empire, had always been in control of his life. His days were filled with board meetings, lucrative deals, and the constant rush of success. But despite all the wealth and status, something was missing: excitement. The workaholic lifestyle had drained him of the thrill he once craved. So, when his assistant invited him to the office party, he decided to attend. He could use a distraction, even if just for a night. At the party, he was surrounded by high-powered executives and colleagues, people who were just as ambitious and business-driven as he was. Yet, among all the faces, one person caught his attention: Ava. She wasn't like the rest of the women in the room. She wasn't dressed in extravagant gowns or speaking in business jargon. Ava worked in the HR department as a receptionist, always behind the scenes, never in the spotlight. But her presence was magnetic. She had a quiet beauty, with soft, intelligent eyes and a smile that was simple but sincere. There was a warmth about her that Ethan didn't see in the cold, calculated conversations of the corporate world. The night flowed naturally. Ethan and Ava found themselves talking, laughing, and exchanging stories. He learned that she had dreams of her own, dreams far removed from the world of tech startups and billion-dollar deals. She was a simple woman with big hopes, trying to make ends meet while working long hours at the company. But as they continued to talk, Ethan felt an undeniable chemistry between them, one that went beyond words. Later, after too many drinks, they found themselves alone. A single decision, a brief moment, and just like that, they ended up in Ethan's penthouse. What started as a playful flirtation turned into a night of passion, unplanned, unspoken, and full of desire. But as dawn broke, the magic seemed to fade. Ava was gone by the time Ethan woke up, leaving behind only a faint scent and a lingering feeling of something unfinished. However, little did Ethan know, this night wasn't just a fleeting encounter. His business partner, Marcus, someone Ethan had trusted for years, had also crossed paths with Ava in the same brief, unspoken way. And what seemed like a simple one-time fling would soon become a tangled web of secrets, betrayal, and a life-changing revelation. 7 months had passed since that unforgettable night. Ethan had returned to his world of high-end meetings, new business ventures, and luxury. Life was as busy as ever, but somewhere deep down, he knew that something was missing. The brief encounter with Ava had lingered in the back of his mind, but he pushed it aside, thinking it was just a fleeting moment. After all, it was a one-time thing, nothing more than a temporary escape from his hectic life. One evening, after a long day of back-to-back meetings, Ethan decided to take a walk through the city. The streets were quieter than usual, and the cool breeze felt oddly calming. As he walked down a dimly lit street, something made him stop. There, standing under the weak glow of a street lamp, was Ava. Her appearance shocked him. She looked completely different, worn down, her face tired, and her clothes ragged. The once confident woman he remembered seemed to have disappeared, replaced by someone struggling to survive. She stood there, looking lost, unsure of where to turn. Ethan's heart skipped a beat as recognition dawned on him. "Ava," he called out, his voice laced with surprise. Ava's eyes met his, and for a moment, it felt as if time stood still. She hesitated before stepping forward. Her eyes were filled with a mixture of fear, shame, and something else, something deeper. "Ethan," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I didn't know how to find you. But I need to talk." Ethan was struck by her vulnerability, but at the same time, a knot of unease began to form in his stomach. "What happened, Ava?" he asked, walking toward her. "Why are you here? What's going on?" Ava took a deep breath, her hands trembling as she clutched a worn purse. Her expression faltered for a moment before she spoke again, this time with an air of reluctant truth. "I'm pregnant, Ethan. And, it's yours." Ethan froze. His mind raced, trying to process what she had just said. Pregnant? 7 months after that night? He felt the world shift beneath him. His breath caught in his throat, but before he could say anything, Ava's next words hit him like a punch. "And there's something else you need to know. Marcus, he's the other father." Ethan's heart dropped. Marcus. His trusted business partner. The man he'd shared everything with. How had this happened? And why hadn't he known sooner? The truth was unfolding before him, but there was more. Ethan couldn't shake the nagging feeling that there was something even darker behind it all. As Ava stood there, nervously awaiting his reaction, the gravity of the situation slowly started to sink in. What was once a brief encounter now seemed to be at the center of a twisted web of secrets, lies, and betrayal. Ethan stood there, his mind reeling. Ava's words echoed in his ears, but he couldn't process them all at once. Marcus, the man he had trusted as his closest business partner, the man he relied on for every decision, was tied to this in ways he hadn't imagined. Not only had Marcus been involved with Ava, but now she was standing in front of him, pregnant with his child. The weight of the situation hit Ethan like a ton of bricks. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" Ethan's voice trembled as he tried to hold himself together. His eyes searched hers, looking for answers, but Ava's gaze remained conflicted. "I didn't know how to," she replied, her voice breaking. "I didn't want to complicate things. I thought I could handle it myself. But now, I can't." Her hands nervously rubbed her growing belly, and Ethan couldn't help but feel a pang of guilt. She looked so vulnerable, so different from the confident woman he remembered. He wanted to comfort her, to make everything right, but there was still a knot in his stomach. "But why didn't you tell me the truth when it happened? Why didn't you reach out?" Ethan pressed, trying to piece the puzzle together. He needed answers, answers that would make sense of the chaos his life had become in just a few moments. Ava hesitated, glancing down at the ground, her lips trembling. "I didn't know how to. I thought Marcus was going to be there for me, but he wasn't. He started avoiding me after we found out, and I didn't know who else to turn to." Her eyes welled up with tears, but she quickly wiped them away. Ethan's anger flared. "So, Marcus knew about this all along, and he didn't tell me? He's been hiding this from me, lying to me, and now I'm the last to know." His voice rose, and his fists clenched at his sides. He had trusted Marcus, he had called him a friend, a partner. But then Ava dropped another bombshell. "It's not just the baby, Ethan," she said softly, looking around nervously. "There's something else you need to know about Marcus. Something I didn't think was important at first, but now. I think you need to hear it." Ethan's heart skipped a beat. What could be worse than everything he had already learned? Ava took a deep breath and finally looked up at him, her eyes filled with fear. "Marcus isn't just avoiding me because of the pregnancy," she said. "He's been hiding something from you, something that could ruin everything." Ethan felt a chill run down his spine. "What do you mean?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Ava hesitated before speaking again, her voice shaking. "Marcus, he's been using company funds for personal investments, and I think he's been funneling money into something illegal. I didn't know until recently, but now I can't keep quiet anymore. You need to know the truth." Ethan's world seemed to crash down around him. The man he had trusted more than anyone else, his partner, his closest ally, was hiding not just a betrayal of trust, but something far more dangerous. It was no longer just about a woman and a pregnancy. The life Ethan had built, the empire he had created, was now in jeopardy because of Marcus's lies and corruption. With his mind racing and his heart pounding, Ethan realized that everything he thought he knew was a lie. He didn't know who he could trust anymore, least of all Marcus. The betrayal cut deeper than he could have ever imagined. The man he had called his best friend was no longer someone he could rely on. Ethan stood in silence, trying to process what Ava had just told him. His thoughts were a whirlwind of confusion, anger, and fear. What would he do now? How would he confront Marcus? And, most importantly, how would he protect everything he had worked so hard for when everything was crumbling around him? Ethan couldn't believe what he was hearing. The walls of his perfectly constructed life seemed to be collapsing, piece by piece, and it was hard to know where to start rebuilding. Marcus, his trusted partner, had been secretly embezzling company funds, and now Ava's pregnancy tied him to this whole mess in ways he never expected. But it wasn't just the money that stung, it was the betrayal. Ethan had known Marcus for years. He had trusted him, relied on him to build the business they had together. And yet, here he was, learning that the man who he had called his closest ally had been working behind his back. The very foundation of his business was at risk. He spent the next few days in a haze, wrestling with the decision of how to handle everything. Part of him wanted to confront Marcus immediately, but the other part of him needed time to process. He wasn't just angry, he was betrayed, and it was hard to know who he could trust anymore. After a sleepless night, Ethan knew he couldn't wait any longer. He needed answers from Marcus. His business, his reputation, and his future were on the line. He dialed Marcus's number, but of course, it went straight to voicemail. Ethan's patience was running thin. He needed to confront him face to face. The next morning, Ethan arranged to meet Marcus at the company headquarters. As he walked into the building, the familiar walls that once represented success now felt cold and distant. He pushed past the employees, trying to ignore the tension in the air, and walked into Marcus's office. Marcus was standing near the window, his back to Ethan. "Ethan," Marcus said, turning around slowly, as if he had been expecting this moment. "I know why you're here." "Do you?" Ethan's voice was steady, but there was a fire behind his words. "You've been lying to me, Marcus. Hiding money, betraying everything we built. I trusted you." Marcus sighed, a look of guilt crossing his face. "I never meant for it to get this far. But I've been under pressure, Ethan. The investments didn't go as planned, and I thought I could fix it. I didn't want to disappoint you." Ethan's anger flared. "Disappoint me? You've risked everything. You've put everything we've worked for on the line. And now you're telling me you're sorry?" His fists clenched, but he forced himself to take a deep breath. "No, Marcus. This isn't just about the money. You lied to me about Ava. You knew she was pregnant. You knew it was my child, and you still didn't tell me. You've been avoiding me because of your own mess." Marcus looked away, unable to meet Ethan's gaze. "I didn't want to complicate things. I didn't know how to tell you. I thought I could fix it before you found out." Ethan stared at him, trying to hold back his frustration. "And what about the company funds? What's the real story, Marcus? Ava says you've been using them for personal investments. Is that true?" Marcus winced. "Yes, it's true. But I never meant to hurt the company. I just thought I could make everything right before anyone noticed. But now I see how much I've messed up. I'm sorry." Ethan felt a knot in his stomach. This wasn't just a personal betrayal, it was one that could cost him everything. His empire, his livelihood, it was all at risk. He stood there for a moment, feeling the weight of the decision he had to make. Could he still trust Marcus? Could he save the company, or was it too late? "You're done, Marcus," Ethan finally said, his voice calm but final. "I can't keep you in this company anymore. You've crossed the line, and I won't let you drag me down with you." Marcus's face fell, but there was no argument. Ethan had made up his mind. As much as it pained him, the trust was gone. His only choice now was to protect his future and the future of the company he had worked so hard to build. Turning on his heel, Ethan walked out of the office. But his thoughts were still clouded with the aftermath of the decision. Ava's pregnancy, Marcus's betrayal, everything was tied together in a mess that seemed impossible to untangle. But he knew one thing: there was no turning back now. He had to take control and figure out how to navigate the chaos that had suddenly consumed his life. Ethan's life had been turned upside down in a matter of days. The shock of Marcus's betrayal still lingered, but now that he had made the decision to remove him from the company, Ethan felt a strange sense of relief. The weight of the partnership that had crumbled under his feet had been lifted, but the personal turmoil was just beginning. Ava's pregnancy, his complicated feelings about her, and the shattered trust in his business had left him questioning everything. For the first time in years, Ethan allowed himself to slow down and reflect. The days following Marcus's dismissal were filled with paperwork, legal meetings, and a flood of decisions about the company's future. He had to reassure clients, replace Marcus's role, and ensure the business continued to thrive. But through it all, his thoughts kept drifting back to Ava. Her news, the revelation of her pregnancy, and the fact that he was now tied to her in ways he never anticipated, he couldn't shake it. One evening, after a long day of meetings, Ethan found himself at his office desk, staring out over the city. The lights of the skyline stretched for miles, but they didn't offer him the comfort they once had. He thought about Ava. How she had appeared on that quiet street, looking lost and scared. She wasn't just the woman from that one night anymore. She was carrying his child, and whether he liked it or not, he had a responsibility. But what did that responsibility look like? Could he be a father to a child he never planned for? Could he build a relationship with Ava, or was this just a duty he had to fulfill? After much contemplation, Ethan knew that he had to face the situation head-on. He owed it to the baby, and to himself, to make a decision. He couldn't run from this. He had already made so many mistakes, but this was something he could take control of. He picked up his phone and dialed Ava's number. Her voice came through softly on the other end. "Ethan? I need to see you," he said, his voice steady but laced with uncertainty. "We need to talk about the future. About everything." The meeting was set for the next day. Ethan felt his nerves rise as he walked into the small cafe where they agreed to meet. Ava was already sitting at a table by the window, her hands folded over her pregnant belly. She looked up as he approached, her expression wary but open. Ethan took a seat across from her, his heart heavy. "I'm not going to pretend I have all the answers, Ava," he began. "But I want to be there. I want to help raise this child, and I think we should figure this out together." Ava's eyes softened. For the first time, Ethan saw a glimmer of hope in her gaze, something he hadn't expected. "You're serious about this?" she asked quietly. "I'm serious," Ethan replied, his voice firm. "We're in this together now, whether we like it or not. I'm going to be there for you and the baby." The weight of his words hung in the air, but for the first time in days, Ethan felt a sense of clarity. His life had been consumed by betrayal and chaos, but maybe, just maybe, this was a chance to rebuild. Not just his business, but his life, his choices, and his future. As the conversation continued, the tension between them began to ease. They spoke honestly, openly, about the baby, about their hopes, and their fears. It wasn't going to be easy, and they both knew that. But as they sat there together, Ethan realized that, in the midst of all the chaos, a new beginning was possible. He wasn't sure what the future would hold, but for the first time in a long time, Ethan was ready to face it. And no matter how complicated things got, he was determined to build something better, not just for himself, but for the family he was about to create.